Chapter 1. The Arrival. The stars above the small, dusty town of Red Creek shimmered faintly, their light barely piercing the thick layer of smog that hung over the horizon. The town was a forgotten relic, a place where people lived simple lives, far removed from the technological advancements of the cities. It was a place where secrets could be buried, and strange occurrences were often ignored. One such secret was hidden in the backyard of Old Man Granger's property. Inside a rusted, weather-beaten doghouse, a creature unlike anything the town had ever seen was locked away. She was small, her skin a shimmering shade of blue, with large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Her name was Zara, and she was an alien, stranded on Earth after her ship had crashed in the nearby desert. Zara had been captured by Granger, a gruff and bitter man who saw her as nothing more than a curiosity, a thing to be kept and displayed like a trophy. He had locked her in the doghouse, treating her like an animal, feeding her scraps and hosing her down with cold water when he felt like it. Zara's once proud spirit had been broken, her hope of ever returning home fading with each passing day. Chapter 2. The Stranger. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the town was bathed in a warm, orange glow, a stranger arrived in Red Creek. His name was Ethan Cole, a drifter with a mysterious past and a heart full of wanderlust. Ethan had been traveling for years, searching for something he couldn't quite name. He had heard rumors of strange happenings in Red Creek, and curiosity had drawn him to the town. Ethan's first stop was the local diner, a small, greasy spoon where the townsfolk gathered to gossip and share news. As he sat at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee, he overheard a conversation between two old men. "Did you hear about Granger's new pet?" one of them asked, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Yeah, some kind of wild animal, they say," the other replied. "Keeps it locked up in that old doghouse of his. Won't let anyone near it." Ethan's interest was piqued. He had always been drawn to the strange and unexplained, and the idea of a mysterious creature locked away in a doghouse was too intriguing to ignore. He finished his coffee and set out to find Granger's property. Chapter 3. The Discovery. It didn't take long for Ethan to locate Granger's house. The property was on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a tall, chain-link fence. The doghouse was easy to spot, its rusted metal roof gleaming in the moonlight. Ethan approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. As he drew closer, he heard a soft, whimpering sound coming from inside the doghouse. It was a sound of pain and despair, a sound that tugged at Ethan's heartstrings. He knelt down and peered inside, his eyes widening in shock as he saw Zara for the first time. She was curled up in a corner, her body trembling with fear. Her eyes met Ethan's, and for a moment, they just stared at each other, two souls from different worlds connected by a shared sense of loneliness and longing. "Hey," Ethan said softly, his voice gentle and reassuring. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." Zara's eyes widened in surprise. She had never heard anyone speak to her with kindness before. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly uncurled herself and crawled towards Ethan, her movements cautious and deliberate. Chapter 4. The Bond. Over the next few days, Ethan visited Zara every night, bringing her food and water and talking to her in soothing tones. He didn't know if she could understand him, but he could see the gratitude in her eyes, the way she leaned into his touch when he gently stroked her hair. As they spent more time together, Ethan began to notice strange things about Zara. Her skin seemed to shimmer and change color depending on her mood, and she had an uncanny ability to sense things before they happened. Once, when Ethan was about to step on a rattlesnake, Zara had let out a sharp, warning cry, saving him from a potentially deadly bite. Ethan knew that Zara was no ordinary creature. She was something special, something extraordinary. and he was determined to help her escape from Granger's clutches. Chapter 5. The Escape. One night, as Ethan was preparing to leave, Zara reached out and grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she spoke. "Help me," she whispered, her voice soft and melodic, like the sound of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had never heard her speak before, and the sound of her voice filled him with a sense of awe and wonder. He nodded, his resolve hardening. "I will," he promised. "I'll get you out of here." The next night, Ethan returned with a set of bolt cutters. He waited until Granger was asleep, then crept into the backyard and cut the lock on the doghouse. Zara emerged cautiously, her eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. Ethan took her hand and led her away from the property, moving quickly and quietly through the shadows. They made their way to the edge of town, where Ethan had parked his old, beat-up truck. He helped Zara into the passenger seat, then climbed in behind the wheel and started the engine. As they drove away from Red Creek, Zara looked out the window, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. Chapter 6. The Journey. Ethan and Zara traveled for days, moving from town to town, always staying one step ahead of Granger, who had discovered Zara's escape and was now hunting them. Ethan knew that they couldn't keep running forever, but he didn't know where to go or who to turn to for help. One night, as they camped under the stars, Zara reached out and touched Ethan's arm. Her skin was warm, and her touch sent a shiver down his spine. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with emotion. "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "I couldn't just leave you there." Zara's eyes filled with tears, and she leaned into Ethan, resting her head on his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of the night. Chapter 7. The Revelation. As they continued their journey, Zara began to open up to Ethan, telling him about her home world, a planet far away, where the skies were always filled with light and the air was sweet with the scent of flowers. She told him about her people, a peaceful race who had been exploring the galaxy for centuries, searching for new worlds and new life. But Zara's journey had taken a tragic turn when her ship had malfunctioned and crashed on Earth. She had been alone and afraid, with no way to contact her people or return home. And then Granger had found her, and her nightmare had begun. Ethan listened to her story with a heavy heart, his anger at Granger growing with each word. He vowed to do everything in his power to help Zara find a way back to her people. Chapter 8. The Plan. One day, as they were passing through a small town, Ethan noticed a flyer for a local science fair. The flyer advertised a guest speaker, a renowned astrophysicist who specialized in extraterrestrial research. Ethan's heart leapt with hope. Maybe this scientist could help them. He and Zara attended the fair, keeping a low profile to avoid drawing attention to themselves. When the time came for the astrophysicist's lecture, they slipped into the back of the auditorium and listened intently. The scientist, Dr. Evelyn Carter, spoke about the possibility of life on other planets and the challenges of interstellar travel. After the lecture, Ethan approached her, his heart pounding with nervousness. "Dr. Carter," he said, his voice trembling, "I need your help." Dr. Carter looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "What kind of help?" she asked. Ethan took a deep breath and glanced at Zara, who was standing nervously behind him. "This is Zara," he said. "She's not from around here." Dr. Carter's eyes widened as she took in Zara's appearance. She quickly ushered them into a private room, where they could talk without being overheard. Chapter 9. The Rescue. Dr. Carter listened to Zara's story with a mixture of awe and disbelief. She had spent her entire career searching for evidence of extraterrestrial life, and now, here it was sitting right in front of her. "I can help you," Dr. Carter said, her voice filled with determination. "But it won't be easy. We'll need to find a way to contact your people and arrange for a rescue mission." Zara's eyes filled with hope, and she nodded eagerly. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much." Over the next few weeks, Dr. Carter worked tirelessly to help Zara. She used her connections to send out a signal, hoping that it would reach Zara's people. Meanwhile, Ethan stayed by Zara's side, offering her comfort and support. Finally, one night, as they were sitting under the stars, a bright light appeared in the sky. It grew larger and larger, until it became clear that it was a ship descending towards them. Zara's heart leapt with joy. "They're here," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Chapter 10. The Farewell. The ship landed in a nearby field, its sleek, silver hull gleaming in the moonlight. A ramp extended from the ship, and a group of Zara's people emerged, their faces filled with relief and joy as they saw her. Zara turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "For everything." Ethan's heart ached with sadness, but he knew that this was the right thing to do. "You deserve to be with your people," he said. "I'll never forget you." Zara reached out and touched his cheek, her hand warm against his skin. "I'll never forget you either," she whispered. With one last, lingering look, Zara turned and walked towards the ship, her people surrounding her with love and protection. As the ship lifted off into the sky, Ethan watched until it disappeared from sight, his heart filled with a bittersweet mix of joy and sorrow. Years passed, and Ethan returned to his life of wandering, but he was never the same. The memory of Zara stayed with him, a constant reminder of the beauty and wonder of the universe. One night, as he sat under the stars, he felt a familiar presence beside him. He turned, and there she was, Zara, her eyes shining with the same light he remembered. "I came back," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "I couldn't stay away." Ethan's heart swelled with joy, and he reached out to take her hand. Together, they sat under the stars, two souls from different worlds, united by a bond that could never be broken. And as they watched the stars, they knew that their journey was far from over. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, and together, they would explore it side by side forever.